Ahoy hoy gang, if this is your first time with us, welcome, and if you're joining us from a previous video, hey, we love to see it, and I'm glad you're here. Season 15. What an absolute wild season, full of some astronomical highs and crashing lows. We'll get some of the best and some of the worst American Dad has in this season, and it very much feels like a teetering point. We'll also get our 300th episode and be able to look back at how a Family Guy replacement pitch turned into a show with an identity all its own. I will say, depending on where you find your season orders, this may be inaccurate, but I am going by the Hulu compilation of episodes, so while the last season had 20 episodes, this one has a much heartier 24. So we get some much needed extra deadage. So, what worked? What failed? Which celebrity guest stars will we hail? It's time for a season like you've never seen as we talk about Season 15. Stan takes the family to Little Columbia when Steve's flimsy wimpy library card needs some plastic laminating reinforcement through hardy Colombian means. But when they get there, Stan admits that he was humbled in Colombia, and we get a flashback to 1980s Miami, where Stan and his old CIA buddies are hunting El Narco as he moves below from Colombia to Miami. Stan is a radical and wild dude, and I'm sorry, but you want to guess who El Narco is? You want to figure out who absolutely clowns Stan at every turn? It's Roger. Like, this is before they canonically met and he goes out and turns Stan into an idol that people can all blame their misfortunes and bad luck on. The episode is also supported by guest voices like Brett Gelman, who you'd recognize from Inside Job, and Arturo Castro, who was in Narcos. 100 Years a Solid Fool isn't a parody episode, it's not some Miami Vice reskin, it is legitimately its own side vignette that ties back into the main plot. I actually wasn't a fan of the episode when I watched it for the first time, but after reviewing it for this series, I have to say I have a newfound appreciation for it. It's smart, has great jokes, Scott Grimes is still a knockout talent, and there's a lot to really love about the episode. It has a solid tempo, and if you look at the season as one marathon, it's a great warm-up for what's coming. Like, it's honestly one of my favorite Stan and Roger episodes because it's playing off of them having no relationship whatsoever. This is just who Roger naturally is as El Narco, and that's just great. I don't know, obviously it's all an excuse to tell a story in 80s Miami and Colombia and have that certain aesthetic, but it still has structure, and yet not too much structure, which is what American Dad does best. Stan has no idea it's Roger, and playing Stan as a total idiot works in much the same vein as Leslie Nielsen in, say, the Naked Gun or Airplane franchises. He's so confident in how dumb he is, and it works for his character. I've had this conversation in previous seasons, but you have episodes where Stan is the voice of reason and logic and a competent CIA agent, and you also have episodes where he's a dumb Stan. He is just the dumbest he could possibly be, but still confident in being wrong. Season 15 is very much a dumb Stan season. Not that that's a bad thing. As we've gone deeper into TBS, there is an evolution of Stan to becoming a more and more dumb dad character. It works as they've earned that and display it in a proper way. He's not becoming a Homer or a Peter. He's Stan. He's a guy that was abused when he was a kid and didn't know how to really handle it. He's a weird and complicated guy just doing his best. And 100 Years a Solid Fool really kind of encapsulates that. It is a solid 9 out of 10 that gets you prepped to go to the stars. It's funny. Much like 100 Years a Solid Fool, I remember not being a huge fan initially, but Downtown might very well be one of, if not the funniest episodes of the season. Steve needs to take the PPSAT, so Haley drives him to the seedy dark underbelly that is Downtown. However, they blow a tire, and Haley and Steve find themselves escaping members of a pyramid-shaped makeup company after witnessing a murder. Stan, believing Haley and Steve dead in Downtown, takes a dangerous trek with Francine and Roger, just to find out that Downtown is completely fine and gentrified now, much to Roger's chagrin. There's such a manic energy to this episode that really works in its favor. I mean, there's a lot of great guest stars, including Joe Latrulio and Michaela Watkins, but the all-star from out of left field is returning great Jane Lynch. I mean, talk about a comedic tour de force. I am so glad she came back for this episode because it feels like her strongest appearance yet. While playing a cop, much like her character in Velma, the absolute cinematic masterpiece that is, Jane Lynch brings a solid delivery that sings every rewatch. Honestly, Downtown might be my favorite Stephen Haley episode. Both Stan and Haley are so incredibly dumb, and having Haley say things like, "They're the car's keys and I'm not going to carry them around for it," like that's just a five-brain thing to say. My God. It's controlled chaos when you look at this episode. How many jokes per minute can they fit in without it seeming over the top? Every time I revisit the episode, I find something new that I never noticed before. I mean, there's just nothing to hate about it. It really is just a perfect little episode. Downtown is a 10 out of 10 episode that perfectly showcases the characters and their dynamics in the TBS era. Ben Schwartz guest stars. Cheek to Cheek focuses on Roger as Jesse, who wants to compete in the World Series of Strip to show off how strip dancing could be chivalric cabaret. He believes in the delicate soft dance of seduction, gallanting across the stage, fully clothed. We get the return of Debbie, played by Jessica St. Clair, which is really interesting that she's just there for some reason. They got the same actor to play her and everything, and she's just there for that one-off joke. Anyway, he gets assaulted, put in a wheelchair, and while Jeff is helping him, he discovers that Jeff has an innate talent for chivalric cabaret. The B story has Klaus moving in with Steve in a doghouse after Francine kicks him out of the little nook. Linda Mamari also passes away. The B story would be the first introduction of Shoshana, Klaus's girl. The A story is great, and honestly, it's great to see a Jeff and Roger story with way lower stakes than, jettisoning Jeff into space. They work really well together, and honestly, this episode is way stronger, again, than I remembered initially. We see Jeff and Roger bond, but more importantly, we get Klaus and Steve, which has grown into one of the funniest combinations in the family. I'm baffled by how well they work together, and honestly, I usually look forward to Klaus and Steve episodes now more than I do any other combination. Cheek to Cheek is weird, because unlike Downtown, it's much more subtle with its jokes. It's not as over the top and takes a lot more time to linger on individual scenes. Klaus playing Guitar Hero is a great example of that. American Dad can juggle fast, almost rapid-fire joke-telling and longer developed narrative comedy with such grace that it truly is like a chivalric cabaret. Cheek to Cheek? Yeah, that's gonna be a 9 out of 10 that will charm its way into your heart as you try to forget that The Idol was a show. Have you done it? Have you forgotten about The Idol? It didn't happen. It's canceled. Shh, this is all a dream. Just wake up. Let's just get this out of the way. This episode has probably one of the biggest guest stars on the show. He has been in everything from Garfield to Rat Race. He was in no less than 4 episodes of Robot Chicken and 5 episodes of the Hulu great Crossing Swords. I mean, when I think quality animation, I think Crossing Swords. Who needs a conclusion to Supermansion when I have Crossing Swords and MODOK? Yum, yum. We're eating good in the neighborhood today, gang. Anyway, I am, of course, talking about the comedy legend himself, Breckenmeyer. That's right, star of Franklin and Bash himself. The Breckster is a powerhouse that keeps that hype train going. Oh, and The Weeknd guest stars. One of the biggest musical hits in modern history, and just kind of a big deal overall. Yeah, this is The Weeknd episode. The entire episode revolves around The Weeknd, and honestly, it really kind of works. Roger pretends to be The Weeknd while The Weeknd hangs around the house, and Haley tries to seduce him when he bursts into song. I mean, what do I say? Much like Blogsnard, A Love Story, and Kim Kardashian, here American Dad has one of the biggest guest stars of the modern age, and they balance the line of satire perfectly. They practically deify him in the dumbest ways imaginable, and honestly, his delivery sells it. If The Weeknd sucked at voice acting, that would be one thing. But honestly, he does a phenomenal job and elevates the episode as a whole. A Star Boy is Born is a special episode. It's something you don't get twice. American Dad has earned this episode, and honestly, it just feels like it happened because The Weeknd is a fan. And I can't even be mad about that. It's like Post Malone playing Magic. It's just an awesome thing to see. A Star Boy is Born is an out of this world 10 out of 10. Well, we had our fun run, didn't we, gang? It's been real. Look at that. We talked about 4 just really great episodes of American Dad, and we can just walk away here. It's okay. I won't tell anyone. I'll see you in season 16. That one has the Wonder Cabinet, and that's pretty funny. But if you're gonna stick around, if you want to brave this storm, you are a brave and noble spirit indeed. Tapped Out is about how Francine has been feeding Steve breast milk his entire life. She drugs him and makes him think he's addicted to her breast milk, and so he gets back on the sauce so he doesn't screw up his performance of Oedipus. Shock comedy works for some people. It's an abstract and one can say most primordial form of meta-comedy as a whole. It's what trendy jokes are sculpted from. This is not shock comedy. This is bad. Tapped Out is just bad. Oh, but it references Green Gables. Oh, yes it does. Yes it does, it sure does. And it doesn't do anything with it. Doesn't do anything for the episode as a whole. Don't know why it's there, but sure, yeah, it does reference Green Gables. That's so cool. I mean, how do you defend an episode like this? How do you sit down and go, yes, this is peak right here. Yes, sir, I have ordered 1 order of peak, and this is it, Tapped Out. I do not get it, and I will probably never get it. I watched the whole thing through again, and if nothing else, it made me viscerally uncomfortable. It evoked raw, unbridled emotion of some variety out of me. So if nothing else, I can say the episode isn't boring. If that must be the lowest bar we allow ourselves, let's let it be that. I don't know, 4 out of 10. And yet, despite all that, where I would say skip Deacon Stan Jesus Man, I won't say skip Tapped Out. If you are in it for the long haul with season 15, then you need to watch Tapped Out. Just keep powering through. Remember when The Weeknd sang Like a Virgin? You'll be okay. Keep fighting. We need to set sail because we're going to Brave Noob World! Haha, comedy. This is a doozy. Okay, so Stan and the CIA boys have to enter an Overwatch tournament to take out a North Korean general. Stan uses Steve to teach them all how to play Overwatch better and keeps him in the dark about their mission as they fly out to China and talk about how great Chinese ice cream is. But don't worry, it hasn't gotten weird yet. The B story has Jeff, Haley, Francine, and Roger getting their heads stuck in a banister on their super busy important day, and wacky hijinks ensue. This is juxtaposed with Steve finding out the CIA was lying to him, they fail the mission, and total nuclear devastation extinguishes all life as we know it. And then a Chinese culture pod flies into space where a single scoop of Chinese ice cream is discovered by an advanced race of aliens who bring Earth back so they can eat this apparently super delicious ice cream. In this new Earth, Stan hugs Steve, and this singular hug makes him question the very fabric of reality while dealing with naysayers like Bill Nye, played by the actual Bill Nye. There's a lot here to chew on, but I think the tone of the episode overall is great. It never lets the devastation sink in until the last moment and the jokes actually fade away. I really wish I understood the Chinese ice cream joke. I really do. Maybe it's like American Fung, maybe it's just apparently that good. I genuinely have no idea. This is by no means the best Steve and Stan episode, nor does it have the best B story, but it does still have a charm all its own. While the Overwatch scenes were jarring, the dialogue at least felt written by people that understand the concepts at the base of the game. It might be minute, but things like tank, healing, doom, torb do add up credibility to what they're saying, even if it's passively. It's those small attentions to detail that make this just a weird, wild ride that, again, if nothing else, it's not boring. Brave Noob World is a perfectly balanced and unnerved 6 out of 10. Into the Woods, I think, can be perfectly described as experimentally mundane. It peers over the fourth wall, acknowledges the formula to the show, and then doesn't really do anything with it. While Stan and Roger are getting subs at Subs Galore, not to be confused with SubHub, keep up, Stan bumps into an old childhood friend working at the Subs Galore. When he and Roger follow him around, they find that he isn't living a Warren Buffett situation and is in fact poor, and Stan blames himself for it. Which, I mean, the man has an apartment, a car, a management position. He's got DVDs, which, let's talk about it, were a dead medium. Now all of a sudden, kinda looking really good with how fractured streaming is. Like, I'm just saying, the guy could be worse off. It could be a lot worse. I don't know. Doesn't seem like a guy I'd intervene with. But now Stan is determined to right the wrongs of the past and help him overcome his embarrassment caused by Stan not defending him on Halloween when they were kids. However, Roger has a cold and knows he isn't going to be able to go along on the adventure. So they need to find a fill-in and have a showcase where Stan picks Francine for his Roger companion as she promises to bring Power Clown energy. And that's a joke that lasts throughout, but it just doesn't go further than that one recurring thing. It's nice to see them write the Stan-Francine dynamic intentionally differently, and the dialogue is sharp in the first half of the episode, but the second half really kinda trails off. This episode would do great with a B story, because this A story cannot carry all the weight by itself. Have Steve and Klaus do a quick little thing. Maybe Jeff gets real good at Guitar Hero. I don't know. Anything to break it up so the other payoff feels a little more delayed and therefore a little more earned. The episode even has a pretty sizable guest cast, including the likes of Jason Mantzoukas and Colin Hanks. But even then, it just doesn't really do much. It's not a skip, it's just not in the running for best episode anytime soon either. Into the Woods is a middling 6 out of 10. When Danuta catches Haley slacking on her humanitarian efforts, Haley decides to help Klaus get his citizenship, which could not go wrong at all. I love that new Haley has two sides. She's either totally put together, climbing middle management with confidence, or she's one of the dumbest, self-centered idiots in the family, and they've learned how to write both perfectly. I will say this episode also just has a fantastic cameo by the great Patricia Belcher. You've seen her in something at least once in your life, and everything she's in, she brings a great energy to, and this episode is no different. Remember her in Bones? She was great in Bones. And so yeah, when Haley takes Klaus to get his citizenship, they find out he's been an illegal immigrant for 20 years and send ice on him. So Haley decides to turn herself into a fish, marry Klaus, and that way he can get his citizenship and she can prove she's totally selfless to Danuta to shut her up. Checkmate. Klaus is great this episode as the very odd voice of reason, and honestly I think he saves the A story. Jeff is great absolutely, but Klaus just keeps the crazy energy going even as he's shooting down Haley's dumb ideas. And you have all this going on juxtaposed with the B story, which is, get this, the family buys a coconut from the farmer's market, refuse to pay an opening fee, and try everything they can to open it as they slowly go insane. Still also a very solid B story that has the entire family just being the dumbest they can possibly be. I really kinda love it though. It's like the house had a gas leak this week and they're just dealing with monoxide poisoning or something. Hi, Anime Academic here. This is your friendly neighborhood reminder to check and make sure all your alarms have been tested and have fresh batteries. Take the 5 minutes. It's better than being dead. One Fish, Two Fish, I think, is going to be a love or hate episode, and while I initially wasn't the biggest fan, it definitely spoke to me more this rewatch, and I really do appreciate the creativity at work. We're getting hot scoop levels of idiocy out of Haley, and it just really works at this level. The episode is a solid 8 out of 10 that is a good casual American dad that serves up idiot freshness. No, I don't know what idiot freshness is, and no, I don't know why I put it in the script, but I'm just gonna trust past me on that one and hope you'll understand. Darcy Carden and Jamelia Jamil of The Good Place guest star. Roger, Jeff, and Francine are house spouses that feel like all they do is drink and sit around and watch TV. Because all they do is drink, sit around, and watch TV all day. Haley buys Jeff a present and expects nothing in return, and he takes it as a personal offense because he could never get her anything that nice. And so Roger, Francine, and Jeff buy a tour bus and begin driving people around to R.G. Berger's serial killer crime scenes to try and make up some extra money. Klaus is a lion man, and it's glorious. He even has a little song, and it's so charming to see him up on that pole working hard. I know I haven't said much about the episode, but I genuinely do love Exquisite Corpses. I'd say it's a solid 10 out of 10 that's probably one of the strongest of the season, mostly due to the odd dynamic trio of Roger, Jeff, and Francine. They really are the three stooges of the family that have the most chaotic energy that we've seen established as far back as Wild Women Do and Widow's Peak. I like how they just feed off of one another, and having the patrons on the bus adding into it, including Craig Robinson, who would not like attention brought to himself at all. The episode plays out exactly how you think it will all the way to the conclusion, and even then that feels predictable, but on brand in a good way. It's a 10 out of 10 episode that doesn't overcomplicate itself and celebrates three great characters that is a much watch of the season. Even just the scene where they're scraping holes in the windows to look out has a chaotic charm that I think encapsulates the whole feel. They are going to be a positive about the situation even if it kills them, literally. And I am positive this episode is magic. Stan gets hit by a satellite in his own home and gets put in the hospital, so Francine can nurse him back to health and have him be a little more dependent on her. She rewards him with trophies, and he eventually gets obsessed with them, eventually buying the trophy store. Gee, does this sound familiar at all? I'm feeling a little repetitive this season. Then, when Francine has to work in the store that they just bought, Stan buys the pickle house across the street to open a competing trophy store. Doesn't that sound great? Oh man, rev up those fryers, they're cooking up something bland and nothing. Oh wait, hang on, there's a B story here. The rest of the family discovers that Tuttle is huge in Korea on a hidden camera reality show called Sad Fatty, where they watch his daily home life. Understand this. If Richard Kind was off even a little as Tuttle, the episode would have fallen flat on its face right out the get-go. This episode is such a testament to his skill and talent as an actor, as a tour de force brilliance. Truly, I would say that he is one of the strongest elements that has helped elevate American Dad as a whole. The family tries to get in on the Sad Fatty fame by being weird and wacky, but that's not what the people want to see. No, they come for Tuttle. They come for Sad Fatty. It's amazing. Honestly, the length Stan goes to stop Francine from being successful, I would say goes far enough to be funny, and the whole pickle man element at the end really saves the A story from being largely forgettable. If the B story wasn't nearly as strong as it is, this might have been one of the weakest episodes of the season. Instead, it's carried to a solid 8 out of 10. Eat the trash cake, Tuttle. Eat the trash cake. Stan is a sore loser and bad at games. So during family game nights, the family throws the games and Jeff is tired of it and decides to call Stan out like only he can. Stan decides to take the family to Bullock's new special Labyrinth inspired by Jim Henson's Labyrinth, even having Bullock in his best David Bowie attire. Stan gets stuck while the family keeps pressing on, eventually making it to the end where Stan decides to go again and the family just leaves him there. Some time passes and the family get worried when they haven't heard from Stan in some time, and they decide to go and see him, and the labyrinth has fallen into disrepair. They now have to navigate the dilapidated labyrinth to get to the end and get Stan out. The B story has Roger getting geese to cultivate foie gras. I'm not going to tell you what foie gras is, nor will I tell you to Google it. I'll just say it tastes good when done right. The episode is what I kinda wish Jeff and the Dank-Ass Weed Factory was. It's obviously a parody of Labyrinth, but it takes it in a new direction that, even if it still feels kind of stale, at least is different. It's not one of the best episodes, and Stan can be pretty insufferable intentionally throughout, but it does have a charm, and I gotta give credit where credit is due. Game night is inventive, and you're either going to love or hate it, but it'll make you feel a lot of something at least. The end does feel very rushed, and that seems to be the problem with a lot of these episodes. The runtime is only 21 minutes now as opposed to the old 23, and I don't know, you can start to feel those extra minutes add up. Steve and the boys have been saving up for calf implants at the local kid bank, and when Steve buys a nice backpack with the entire fund, they're understandably upset. However, they agreed to all get a weekend job as part of an experiment at the school run by Roger to pay for their new calves. The experiment is a parody of the Stanford prison experiment. You know, the horribly infamous one that they had to shut down early because it got way too dangerous. Don't Google it. Google it. Basically, half get guard and half get prisoner, and yeah. Really interesting, odd movie about the Stanford experiment starring American Dad legend Forrest Whitaker, called The Experiment, by the way. So, you know, it's all connected. 5 degrees of the experiment. I could talk about the B story, but there's just not that much there to say. Stan grieves the death of the groundskeeper only he remembers, and so he stops talking and uses a leaf blower everywhere. We get to the return of Dr. Ray, played by Ted Danson, who yet again dies in an incredibly gruesome fashion. The episode is fine. Always great to hear Ron Perlman. William Jackson Harper also guest stars for a few episodes this season, so that's a really weirdly specific 4 Good Place actors guest starring in one season. Like, sure, Ted Danson is a recurring character, but the rest just seems curious. Saying Beetlejuice and Community levels of curious. I can go on these little tangents because, yeah, there's nothing here you haven't almost literally seen before. It's a funny take on a crazy experiment, and honestly, I say is one of the strongest Steve and the Gang episodes in a while. While the B story doesn't do much for me, I can respect the dedication to the idea and how far they were willing to take it. Overall, American Data is a fantastic 8 out of 10. Steve and the gang ride some sweet powder when they're joined with their newest member, Slort. We also get Billy as a new member of the boys. Billy, an absolute legend that I'm glad to see included now, featuring a tongue. Slort? Yeah, it's just trolls backwards. She's a troll. That's it. That's the whole story, summed up as fast as possible. The boys run from Slort, and Billy has to try and save his precious boys. All because the boys didn't want to lose Slort to the Cools, even framing her for graffiti. And that's it. It feels like a Christmas episode, but it's really just Steve and the boys being bad friends. I love the Billy parts of the episode, and this does feel a lot like, say, The Witches of Langley, where it's a boys-focused adventure that goes to weird, almost homage-filled places. Agnes Lindstrom does a lot of the vocal heavy lifting as Slort this episode, and if her delivery wasn't as strong as it is, the episode as a whole would have been middling at best. It's solid enough and offers a good watch a few times through, but having watched it 5 times at this point, I'm just kind of burnt out on it. It just doesn't have the legs to be a wholly memorable episode other than 1 or 2 scenes. Watch it, it's different enough. Salute Your Slorts is a perfectly fine 7 out of 10. Jack is gunned down in a highway chase in a very famous Bronco on live TV. The whole family watches, and Stan starts to spiral as he never got any amount of closure and starts up a rock band with some kids. So the family decides to do a fake seance so Stan can get it all out. Except they actually do summon the ghost of Jack and bind him to the house. Jack tricks the family, then possesses Steve to try and finish the heist he got caught at. The episode is about grief. It's about letting go. It's about celebrating your family and breaking the cycles of abuse. It's about a lot of things, but ultimately, with all the Jack growth we've seen, it just feels, out of place. If this was before the Krampus episodes, I wouldn't have had much problem with it, but I don't know, it just doesn't seem like it earned the retcon. Of course, it's great to have more of Darren Norris, but I feel like he could have just played a different character at this point. The B story also has Jeff and Haley getting 2 oars and finally go out in their own canoe. However, they spin and end up in weeds and just have a miserable experience throwing the relationship on the rocks. Ghost Dad is a weird episode that, honestly, I really enjoyed. It has a lot of solid jokes and a ton of solid charm. It's great to see Stan actively trying to break the cycle with Steve, and the resolution being him actually uplifting his son, unlike how Jack treated him, while played as a joke, at least shows he's trying. My only gripe is that it just feels like a season 12 or 11 episode. It doesn't feel like a season 15. It feels old even when it's brand new. Ghost Dad is a totally fine 7 out of 10. Klaus is getting married to Shoshana, and so he needs his boys, Roger, Stan, and Jeff, to help throw the wildest bachelor party as Klaus's boys. Meanwhile, with the men gone, Francine and Haley decide to hire a stripper, and what they get is Rick Rod, played by Patton Oswalt, who starts to break down when he can't perform his dance and runs and hides in the house. And so Francine and Haley have to have him compete against his rival, Todd Rod, played by Matthew Mercer. Jotaro Kujo is in this episode. It's a weird but satisfying get. He does an excellent job. Klaus leads the boys on and keeps getting them in a more and more dangerous situation, so he can't make it to the wedding that wasn't really happening and just bounce. Men to Boys, I think, is great. Not only for the great Klaus writing, but also just again an untested dynamic that really works. The B story is hysterical, and Patton Oswalt brings a lot back to the show since he has been a guest star in the show since its Fox days. Between Instapot talk, fantastic dialogue, and just a solid overall vibe, this episode is quintessential TBS American Dad. This is a solid 10 out of 10 and a must-watch episode of Season 15. It pulls you in and doesn't let you leave until you're one of the boys. After Stan is rescued by good Soul of the Earth farm people, he decides that Haley and the family are too soft, so he makes a tiny home and turns them into farm folk. However, when Haley gets too intense on the farming, he decides to try and sabotage her yields, so she'll come back to her old ways. It's just a dumb farm episode that works because it's just nonsense. The absolute powerhouse of the episode, though, is when Stan has Roger sabotage the crops, and out of nowhere, a Weird Al parody of Sabotage starts to play. Leave it to American Dad to just throw a Weird Al song into an episode that actually kind of brings the whole thing together. Again, it's stuff like this that makes you see they haven't gotten lazy. Starboy is Born is a perfect example of that. They could have had any song they wanted. Instead, they had Like a Virgin, which is not only a super sharp parody, but just a solid bop performed by The Weeknd. And then here you have Weird Al doing Rabotage, which you would swear he's done a Sabotage parody before, and it's just great. It's just delightful. Why not? Why not include Weird Al? And that's something you will not get in another show. American Dad is willing to do that. It is willing to be weird. It's episodes like First Do No Farm that make all the American Dad hate feel so unearned. Oh yeah, no, tell me more about how American Dad is for the lowest common denominator when it's making Twilight Zone episodes and slipping original Weird Al songs into A stories. Family Guy wishes it could do this. First Do No Farm is a solid 8 out of 10. Roger gets a new boyfriend. It's Dick from the CIA. That's right, dadders. It's a Dick episode. Everyone loves Dick. He just gets up inside you and makes you laugh every single time. Oh, that kooky Dick, always getting up to shenanigans. Yeah, no, it's a very special episode where as Roger gets obsessed with Dick, he starts leaving the family high and dry. Then after a rough breakup, he and Francine go to Italy to try and do an Under the Tuscan Sun. However, when they return and Roger sees Dick has a new girlfriend, he goes full on Jean Reno, Leon the Professional to hunt Dick down. That's right, the second half of this episode is a Leon the Professional reference. Again, just slipped in there with no big fanfare because American Dad has earned that. Even if you don't know Leon the Professional, the rest of the story still works with Roger as just some French assassin. But if you do know it, there's references sprinkled in throughout. You're not obligated to get the reference to get the joke, but if you get the reference, you're rewarded with a better joke. It takes a special kind of show to be able to weave something like that, and I love that it's in an episode called Roger Needs Dick. There's an awareness to it, is all I'm saying. Roger Needs Dick, I think, is a solid 10 out of 10, and probably the best episode of the entire season. It feels much like Persona Assistant in that it's all roads end at Roger, and traditionally those types of episodes are pretty dang solid. Roger Needs Dick knows how much absurdity he can get away with and comfortably treads that line. There's a special kind of magic to Roger Needs Dick that shows you can do something smart and clever in an episode without drawing attention to it. No, hey Lois, remember that time Brian was like Jean Reno and Leon the Professional but with like dog edibles or something? No Rick explaining the joke after the fact so the audience feels all clever because they didn't need the explanation. It just trusts you to get it. It trusts you to enjoy. We're over 290 episodes into the series, and to have something like Roger Needs Dick is a showcase of why this show has gone on for so long. They still got it. Watch Roger Needs Dick. Sit down and just enjoy some of the sharpest 21 minutes American Dad has put out. It's a 10 out of 10, full to the brim with quality. Or you'll absolutely hate it, and that's okay too, you know, you do you. Stan has no interest in learning about his family heritage, and Steve is desperate to find out. And so he takes his dad's DNA and his own and sends it to an ancestry site. After running it through, they discover they're Canadian, and Steve is determined to find their relatives. The B story has Francine following Haley around as she secret shops at SubHub to try and find employees to rile up. Of course, they all follow SubHub protocol perfectly, except for one that Haley decides to investigate. This perfectly encapsulates how SubHub has gotten weirder and weirder. At first, you look at it as just a subway type, but now they have built it into such a wild, confusing assortment of things. Again, Subs Galore is also equally weird. Just hearing them talk about the sandwiches for like a minute is incredibly unsettling. Anyway, Stan and Steve go to a meetup where they think they're going to learn about their Canadian roots, but sure enough, the Ancestry website is just a way for organ dealers to find out what blood type people are and kidnap them to harvest their aforementioned organs. Haley ends up turning the guy into SubHub corporate, and he ends up on the party sub of SubHub, and, you know, that's about it. The old country is okay. It doesn't do anything horribly wrong, but it doesn't do anything particularly astounding either. The Steve song is fun, but it's definitely not one of the best songs of the series or anything. The old country suffers because it's directly after Roger Needs Dick, and if you don't watch the season in order, I think it would probably be funnier. But for where it is, it's a perfectly fine 7 out of 10. Haley decides to go and be a businesswoman when Francine laughs at her trying to be professional. Not because she hates professional women, just because she doesn't think it's a fit for Haley. And so, thanks to Roger, they both get jobs at a company and plan a major pitch to move up the corporate ladder. Stan plans a party. Two equally important things. How could any B story compete with something like the unveiling of Meat Getty and Spag Balls? Tom Kenny does a ton of the heavy lifting this episode, and he just brings so much high energy to the delivery and brings the whole thing together. Stan and the gang dogpile on Snoot and take a quick nap while he enters a diabetic coma. There's a Thunderdome, Sky Crooner is back, Haley and Francine reconcile, it's a whole sweet thing. They go real in-depth into Shine Theory, so, you know, they don't mess around on the Dad Show. The party was an absolute rager and the gang slept through it all. Mark Evan Jackson is in a lot of the season and it's easy to pick him out, but his delivery as the executive in this episode is oddly inspired. I don't know, he made a nameless character memorable, and that takes a lot of real skill. Businessly Brunette is a great episode that gives us a fantastic Haley and Francine episode that actively works through their trauma and shows they genuinely care for another. While Ghost Dad focused on Stan and Steve, this gives us another beautiful dichotomy to appreciate. Businessly Brunette is a very professional 9 out of 10. Wherever you guess this episode is going, you're wrong. Francine can't stand the sound of Roger's voice unless he's whispering, so she takes him to places where he has to whisper, and her neurons fire off. She falls into an ASMR rabbit hole and keeps him whispering, even recording conversations to play them back later. Okay, so that's the first little half. Seems to make enough sense, right? The B story has Steve getting ready to put a secret admirer letter in a girl's locker, only to then have a giant bar of rebar jammed in his head. You know, I'm just gonna say it. You pulled that thing out, you wiped the gray matter off? That'll be some good rebar right there. Anyway, he sees the note and thinks someone left it for him, and thus begins his brain-damaged adventure to find the secret admirer that doesn't exist. Oh, wacky hijinks with Steve and the gang. How utterly delightful. What, you're curious how the A story ends? Oh, well that's easy. Roger feels ignored by Francine when he talks normally, so he goes to Chernobyl, turns into an irradiated psychic monster, and Francine has to go and get him back as he gets corrupted more and more by the aforementioned radiation. Like, it's not a bad episode by any stretch of the imagination, but it is rough to watch the back half. It almost feels Cronenberg-esque with the weird body horror they went with. It's definitely not an episode I'd recommend skipping because, again, it has a ton of great jokes and wonderful gags. Even the Klaus spa day in the kitchen is just incredible. It's just an episode I'd put a warning on so you know that things are gonna get really weird really fast. Francine loves fly fishing and Stan absolutely hates it. They can never seem to agree on what they want to do as a family hobby, but when he's determined to stop her hobby, Stan dams the river and makes it a lake where he encounters Clennard, played by comedian John Reep. The B story is Haley and Steve investigating why there's marks on the door and discover that Klaus had a fake imaginary son based off a kid in a commercial. Haley and Steve decide to set the two up and see if they can make a connection or something. Francine gets tired of dam life, blows it up, and Stan and Francine have to escape from dam rednecks to save themselves. I really like how much agency Francine has in this episode, and she's not being mean or vindictive about her actions. He took her hobby away from her. He did all this, and she's tired of him being selfish, so she acted out and got revenge. We also get Roger as a dam cook doing a little Joe Dirt thing, which is great, and has a lot of solid cutaways attached. The B story is a solidly unhinged Klaus B story that teeters that line of uncomfortable perfectly. Until you find out Fred Savage played Omar, and there's a lot of layers on why that's uncomfortable now. Damn Stan is fun, funny, and lands everything it's going for. It's a terrific 9 out of 10 that wraps the last normal episode before the final rush to the end of the season. Francine wants to take the last ride of the Dodge City Rambler to go and visit her Aunt Karen. Okay. The intro, when Stan punches Roger, might be the best cold open the show has had yet. It still hits. It's always good. Every time I see it, it's just boom, quality right in my face. Everyone dresses up in old 1800s outfits, and yeah, sure enough, the fake actors and everyone get held hostage by actual train thieves. Aunt Karen decides to join them in their train ride while Roger and Haley follow a fellow train goer that is in no way Prince. Stan gets lost in the world of marbles and decides to miss the train until he sees that it's an actual train robbery. All this while Steve is nose deep in train facts. Prince is obsessed with transportation. Steve gets used to keep the train going for the robbers, blissfully unaware that they aren't actors. A lot of things happen this episode. The robbers plan to run the train right through the Bradford Company headquarters to avenge the leader's ancestor for incredibly asinine reasons, but hey, it's American Dad. It's what we do for love. Stan has to work with Aunt Karen to save the day, and honestly, I like that Aunt Karen is a fleshed out character that we get for one episode so far, and that's good enough for me. The last ride of the Dodge City Rambler is a great idea executed in probably the best way it could have been. While the family is all on one train, they manage to break into 5 smaller conflicts that need to be resolved. It gives everyone ample time to be doing something other than Jeff and Klaus, and lets them have their own mini adventures. Sure, nothing really gets a ton of time, but none of the stories feel short-souled either. It's a 10 out of 10 episode that walks a very delicate balance and hits every note perfectly. Honestly, no notes. You got Ron Perlman, Tom Kenny, and some of them are the best Stan lines. What's not to love? So back in Father's days, there was a golden turd moment where the senator is taken out and a cleaning lady finds the turd and brings it to the Vatican, where the Pope and the other Knights of the Turtle are ordered to debate on how they should go about returning the turd to its source. I didn't mention my Father's Days review. I'm human. I make mistakes. I'm sorry, but I'm talking about it now. And that's what leads us into the 300th episode and the epic golden turd conclusion. The holy leaders and Beyonce take each other out, a delivery girl returns the turd to Roger, and he shatters into 300 pieces, and pieces brought back to the world. Utopia has been achieved. Pandora's box has been sealed once more. However, with everything being constantly perfect, the family decided to save Roger and start putting him back together by getting all the pieces and stitching them together, even fighting Steve Harvey to get the last piece back. After freeing Roger, the turd falls out, Stan swears to destroy it, and the family spends the next 20 years fighting each other over the aforementioned turd. In a way, I'm glad the turd made its way home to roost. It deserves to be settled by the family. While the turd has been a great way to sew different side stories in, it has definitely earned its rest since its first appearance in Homeland Insecurity almost 15 years prior. 300 is a celebration of American Dad. It's a celebration of the tropes. It's a celebration of the characters, of the writing that makes the show what it is. I will say though, while this does wrap everything, I think I like the 200 better. That still is kind of just the breakout hit of the 100 episode specials. Not that any of these are bad, that one is just especially hearty. The 200 came out early into the TBS run, and now we have had officially over 120 episodes. At the time of recording this, that's closer to 200 overall episodes, and we're actually nearing the 400th episode pretty quickly. I can only hope we get to see it. 300, much like 200, is a love letter to the fans. Sure, it's also Roger-centric, and sure, it swings moods like a pendulum, but it's a fun little adventure that helps you look back at everything American Dad has done and smile with pride. 300 is an unmissable 10 out of 10. It's the Christmas episode and the season finale. TBS would start doing special event episodes, so the Christmas episode of this season as well as season 17, The Grunge, are both the Christmas special and the last episode of the season. If we look at the season 15 finale as 300, hey, that's a really awesome place to end a season and even a show if you needed to. Think about it, wrapping a whole show in a clean 300 episodes while wrapping up a plot device set up all the way back in season 1. Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be kinda cool? Thankfully, the show is still going, but that just shows how solid the episode was. It was a really, really great episode that just brought harmony to it all. It brought balance to the Force. It was the Hayden Christensen of episodes. Yuletide Repeat is not the Hayden Christensen of episodes. So, just some background on this episode, just because it's more interesting than the episode itself. Yuletide Repeat is a play on Live, Die, Repeat. You know, the Tom Cruise movie based off the Japanese novel and manga All You Need Is Kill. However, Live, Die, Repeat had its name changed to Edge of Tomorrow. So technically, the episode title is a pun of a movie title that never technically existed. Yeah, isn't that neat? Anyway, yeah, Stan tries to go back in time to try and save his whole family over and over again. Stan gets isekai'd the Christmas special. I don't know, 6 out of 10, it's fine, it's not horrid, but it's not my favorite at all. It's absurd for no good reason, and that's the worst kind of absurdity. I would have loved if this came out before 300, because I don't think I'd be as harsh in that context. But imagine this being the episode that tides you over for 4 months until the next batch. It doesn't work. That's all I got. It doesn't work for me. I hope it worked for you. I hope you're going, oh, you're so wrong. That's like a 10 out of 10. That's my favorite Christmas special. And if you don't, you know, that's fine too. And there we have it. That's season 15. 301 episodes in, and look at how far we've come. I still have 2 seasons to cover before I'm caught up to the currently ongoing season 18, and it's been a surreal journey going through each of these episodes. There are, of course, some cracks in the writing, and where previous seasons did have a much stronger variety and overall experimentation, especially seasons 13 and 14, I think season 15 was a very safe and comfortable experience. Then there's next season. I'm not gonna lie to you, gang. Thanks to a certain global event that transpired, 3 years ago or so, these next couple seasons are not necessarily a shining beacon of what American Dad is. There's still some fantastic episodes I'm excited to cover, but the peaks are sharper and the valleys are much deeper. The fact anything came out at all, though, is a testament to the talent at work. So anything you think I was right on, wrong on, favorite episodes, least favorite episodes, the usual stuff, let me know in the comments below. And if you liked what you saw, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and tell your friends we're out here. And I'll see you all next time when we get tough like neoprene when we review Season 16. Stay strong, keep fighting, and like always, I believe in you.